Yep, okay, that must be me. Right. Go again. So this one's just a bit of a presentation, a bit of an overview about how we developed some automatic warning notes or system notices on Primo to just let users know if there were issues either with Primo or with Alma. So I've got a link to the code on GitHub at the end of this presentation, if anyone else wants to either implement it or improve it. So the problem basically was that students like to do assignments at 2 AM. Librarians like to occasionally get some sleep. And unfortunately, sometimes the system goes down at 2 AM in the morning. So this could actually happen with our own system too, our old system, but when we migrated to Primo, our senior management was particularly sensitive about any perceived risks to the cloud system. So they asked us to look into how we were going to deal with potential issues. So the solution we came up with uses data from Exlibris's system status API, PHP code on our own server, and a component in the Angular JS package. So that automates a note that displays for users directly in Primo, letting them know that the issue is being looked at by Exlibris, and also in the meantime, like search through it directly through our databases instead. So the first component of that was Exlibris's public site with the system status notifications on it. When I first developed this, that was all they had, so I had to actually use some web scraping to get the data out of it. It was pretty nasty. It did work though, so luckily now they have listened to our feedback and they've created an actual API so we can just make a call for that to get the same information. If, you know, most of the time, obviously it's got the green tick. If there's any issues there, then the great thing about that is that we know that Exlibris already knows about the issue and they're going to be working on it. So there's nothing we can do, nothing we have to do. We can just keep sleeping. It's great. So the main thing you need to know, obviously, is your instance code. So ours, Alma Asia Pacific 01 and Primo multi-tenant APAC 01. The next step is to, now that they've got rid of the screen scraping, access the API, and we use PHP and just a fairly straightforward curl function. I've added in some caching up the top. Well, outside of this bit of code, I've got some caching functions that, because this code would otherwise run every time someone hits Primo's page, we don't want to be calling the API every single time. So we cache the response for about 60 seconds. The second thing I've done with that is I've got a wee toggle to enable or disable verifying the SSL certificate. And that's because we were operating on a environment that I didn't actually understand too well, and it didn't have certificates there. I wasn't quite up to speed on how to fix it. So originally I was just disabling SSL verify peer. We've now got that sorted. So, but sort of got the function in there to let people choose whether or not they want to use that particular option. Technically, it's a bit of a security risk to disable it, but in practice, I figured it's a pretty minor security risk as things go, because we know we're connecting to Exlibris. Once we've got the data from that curl call, we then need to parse that. So some of it's straightforward. It's, you know, it's in a proper API format and so forth. But then you get to the note, which describes what the problem is, and that tends to put in the date in a very machine-y kind of format that our users don't want to see that. So I've got a bit of code in here that's basically looking for the UTC date and just removing that out of there, just to tidy it up a little bit, to have on our server. So basically at the end of this, you get 4 variables, the status for each of Alma and Primo, and then additional notes for each one. The actual warning note system only uses the statuses, but I've also used the notes in some other functions that I've built based on the same code. So the next part is how to get it actually displaying on Primo. Probably at this point I should probably use Ajax or something like that. I don't actually know Ajax, so I just decided to go with what I do know. And so my hack is basically to use PHP to create JavaScript that we can then include in the Primo. So if someone wants to improve this to make it a bit of a more straightforward solution, then I welcome any pull requests. So basically, the first we create some JavaScript variables which contain the exact same contents of the PHP variables. And then the next section of this is saying if there are performance issues or errors, or if it's in maintenance, then start creating a human readable note about what's going on. So if it's maintenance issues, then we say, maintenance is in progress, because it sounds a bit weird to say maintenance has been detected. But if it's performance issues or errors, then it will say, performance issues have been detected. For Alma, it will say some functions like requests, renewals, availability statuses, links to full text may be slow or temporarily unavailable, depending what the issue is. If it's Primo, then we'll say something else, I forget, the search itself will be down, but you can still use my account. And then I've got a function that basically does the display on Primo. So this creates an element to hold that warning note that's been created. I've just used the class names that are already used on Alma for the alert bar, sorry, on Primo, in the Primo alert bar. So that just lets us piggyback on the CSS that's already used there. And then I just insert it straight after the Primo search bar, where it's pretty noticeable for anyone using it. At this point, though, this code is still on our own server, so we need to then get Primo to see it. And so this is where the AngularJS comes in. So in the Primo new UI package, you've got the custom JS file. And so in that, we create a component for PRM main menu after. So basically, as soon as the main menu loads, then this creates a JavaScript function to add a script, another script to the page. And that script that we're adding is the script on our server that we created earlier. So it's a bit roundabout. I also wrap this in a timeout function. And I don't know if this is actually needed for anyone else. I have noticed a lot of the time people post code to the mailing list and say this works for us. When I try to implement it, it doesn't work. But once I wrap it in a timeout to let the page finish loading first, then it works. So it might just be that we're out in the wop-wops and don't have a fast enough internet connection or something. But I've found that wrapping my functions in Primo in a timeout and just let a second or 2 or 3 pass before I try to actually do anything seems to solve pretty much all the problems I've had so far. So then it's just a matter of uploading this through the back office. And then ideally you don't see anything at all, because ideally Primo is actually working. But if there is an issue, then it will display something like this. It will just say service disruption detected. Some functions, this is an issue with Primo, so it will say especially search related, may be temporarily unavailable. And then we've got the standard full service will be restored as soon as possible. In the meantime, check out our databases instead. So as a bonus, having created those variables in the PHP and the JavaScript, we can actually reuse essentially the same code and add the same message or a similar message on our library homepage. So that's before users even get to Primo, they already know that actually maybe they should just use our databases instead. So to actually reuse this, as I said, the code is up on GitHub, and as I was tidying it up to put it there, I've made it fairly simple, I hope, to do. Basically, there's a config file. You just put in your Alma and Primo instances, or just one if you are only using one. You can choose, I've put in the defaults, so using the cache, caching for 60 seconds by default. And then there's a little file for a manual override. We've used that sometimes when, say, EZproxy was down. So we just put a manual note in that to explain that if you're off campus, you're not going to have access to EZproxy for a few minutes. The rest of the settings, so I've got a readable status. So instead of OK or instead of perf, the users will see performance issues, which is just out of the box what Ex Libris tells you, but you can change that to make it a bit more readable if you've got preferred terminology. And similarly for the auto apology. Of course, because it's based in double quotes, if you want any double quotes in your own thing, then you need to escape those. And I've also created a sort of a startup check page while I was trying to make the code as robust as possible. This is inspired by hearing the phrase unit testing and then just taking a guess at what that means, because I'm not a coder. So, but basically what it's doing is checking each possible point that it could break at, and just if it's seeing any potential issues, then suggesting fixes for them. So in this case, for example, I've just taken the screenshot at a point where I hadn't put the Primo instance in. So it's just telling you, yeah, you should probably go back and put something in there. And that's basically it. There's the, whoops, I'll press it here too. There's the code on GitHub if anyone wants to try it out. I would be really interested to get feedback for anyone who does try it, and any improvements if anyone sees a better way of cutting down some of those steps. Any questions? Cool. Oh, yes.
Not really a comment, but have you question? But have you come across something called cachette?
No.
Which is PHP open source status page as well, which might be something you can merge with this, because then you can also integrate self-service status, like your checkout machine status.
Oh yes, yeah.
Or EZproxy or any service basically,
yeah,
rather than just Primo and Alma.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't be as integrated into Primo as this one.
Yeah, yeah. I've got something I wrote that pings a bunch of sites and then just sends us an email if there's an issue. But I haven't looked properly at something for monitoring, yeah, all of our different systems. But I imagine that if you had something like that monitoring them, you could then integrate in the same way if you wanted to. Yeah, cool. Cachette. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, so first, before I start, it's all about Splunk, and I've got Ruby from Splunk here. She's been to see the university's IT security teams basically during the week. So Ruby's here, and there's some cards, business cards for her on the bench here, if anyone's interested. And I've got some t-shirts at the end to hand out. Thanks, Ruby.
We're known for that.
Yeah, they're known for their t-shirts and their slogans. So for those who haven't been to my session on Wednesday, I came from an IT background. I did a science degree in computer science, and then decided to make a career change a few years, 2016. Did my master's in information management and ended up at Monash. So yes, I've got a strong IT background, but I'm currently working in the electronic resources team, half and half in the systems team. So it's just a secondment to the systems team. So at Monash, we use EZproxy for all our access, as I've said before. Whether it's on campus or off campus, we prefer to use EZproxy as far as possible. We manage in electronic resources, most of it ourselves. It's just a physical server that's basically managed by IT people. And we've always used our EZproxy logs basically for statistics and access statistics, and then for preventing compromised accounts. Up until the middle of last year, we used basically Python scripts to do most of what we wanted to do with the logs. And then we were lucky enough to be able to join our IT team in the enterprise Splunk. So they started ingesting our EZproxy logs. Currently, we have available 3 months worth of logs in Splunk to use. So that gives us a very good window into the activity that's going on in the events on our EZproxy. So Splunk is a log ingestion tool. So you could basically, I guess, use another tool, but Splunk is just one way we're doing it. And UniSA and Adelaide do have Splunk, for instance. I don't know who else got Splunk. Okay. Okay, yeah. So it's a fairly widely used product. So so I thought for this session, I am just going to keep it informal. So I will show you my dashboard, show you some of the queries. I'm not a Splunk expert by any means. I basically did the Splunk user certification at Monash. They require us to do that before we can touch Splunk. So we all had to do the user certification. So, and after that, I just started doing queries. But that's a very small part of my role. So I don't actually get the time to better my queries. So I would also like it if anyone has got a better idea. I've also met up this week with Josh from the University of Adelaide, was IT security guy there, and I gave him some of my queries, and he's an advanced user of Splunk, and so he's going to help me to refine my queries a bit. So anytime if you want to get your hands on my queries, just email me. I'll send it. If we can help each other. I've been pretty lonely in this battle up to now, so it'd be nice to have someone else on board. Yes, so there's other things. There's some things I'm not going to share because this is recorded and in the end going to be on a public forum. There's some secrets that I'm not going to share here, but that I'm willing to share my queries outside. Ways we detect usage. So what I'm showing you here is some of the ways we look at irregular usage, but there are 1 or 2 extra things that we do. So basically we've had, if you haven't heard, what I've said on Wednesday, we've had a lot of success in this. We went from around 25 downtime days in 2016 and 2017, downtime because of bridge and excessive downloads. We went down from 25 to up now 0 this year this far. So we have no downtime because of excessive use. IEEE has also reported to us that we had 17 incidents last year. We've only had 4 up to now. And it also started declining already in August last year, as soon as I started implementing the queries and starting to look at the accounts through Splunk. So the success is definitely there. I mean, it's just one of those things. IEEE has seen a worldwide increase to the number of breaches, and from SIAP specifically, and then also universities are being targeted that haven't been targeted before. So it's definitely on the increase. So let me get into this. So I basically created a dashboard that I open up in the morning. So I've anonymized this dashboard so that I can show it here. So all the X's are basically usernames. So in the mornings, this is a live one. So in the mornings, I'll open my dashboard and have a quick look at what's going on and maybe run a few reports. It's not part of my dashboard, just because they're very heavy on the resources. So one of the things I specifically look at is EZproxy user access from more than one country in the last 7 days. I pick countries that I'm specifically interested in. United States is a huge issue for us, Canada, and then Europe. So this is today. So the first one is a bit of an issue. If you look at Australia, Canada, Malta, and the United Kingdom, I don't feel comfortable with that one. The next one is only an issue to me because the United States are in there. I sort of realized early on that Australia, China, Hong Kong, and any of the Asia Pacific is usually not an issue. Especially if China is there, because people tend to use VPNs to get out of China because they're so blocked. So they use VPN, so you do see a lot of jumping around. But the United States, I always investigate. So we've also found that we always need to investigate. So you can't automate this whole process to block users and to react straight away, because there's times that people are just doing silly things. And nowadays with Netflix, people will go on a VPN to watch Netflix in another country, and then they forget that they're on that VPN and they access your electronic resources on that VPN. And so, you can't say just because there's a lot of country changes or, it is a problem. You have to investigate every single one of those. So at Monash, we follow the principle of, we report it to our IT, they get blocked, the account is basically, the password is reset straight away. We block the account, the password is reset, and the user is contacted for education. So we closely work with our help desk around that to make sure that there's education. And as I've said on Wednesday as well, it has happened before that a user wasn't educated, and it took about 3 to 4 weeks, and that user was targeted again. So they just send a phishing email again out to that user because they've known they've previously been able to sort of pick up this user's credentials. So they just send an email again to that same user. So education is one of the most important things in this process for us. We are very adamant about that. We don't unblock a person out of EZproxy, from EZproxy, unless they have educated the person. Through this, we've also been able to support the rest of the university. We had a serious breach at Monash, and only after IT security investigated, it took them a while. They realized that this is the person that we've already blocked a while ago, and the password's been reset. So we've actually stopped that activity on the other Monash systems by reporting it from EZproxy. So our IT security is now very interested in what we're doing in EZproxy. So I'm working with them to help them. So they're implementing a new access, they're implementing Okta, at the end of June, and they are looking at queries. How can they use some of the queries I use to also block anything earlier they're not specifically EZproxy, but what are the patterns we've been seeing? So the country changes is one of the important things. Then on the other side, I've got the total downloads. So I've seen that up to about 1.5 gig a day is not too bad. So, you know, if you just look at all the resources as an average, no one has blocked us for a person downloading 1.5 gig so far. So, but this can be deceiving because some of the illegal downloads are done little bit by little bit. So they do a little bit here, then, you know, wait a while and do a bit more. So I use this also just as an indication, but this is not one, the total download is not one of my most important flags. I've also recently started looking at the number of sessions, events, or events that happen during a session. I'm still busy streamlining that. So I still need to investigate to see what my limits should be and what is something I should react to. I'm not 100% sure yet of what's going to happen there. But it is, I started doing that after last week. I saw someone who was a compromised account that had a lot of events during that session, even just small checking database access and things like that. So that's why I've added that there. The other one is the number of sessions per user in the last 7 days. And once again, you have to investigate those users. I just used the top, I think, 20 or something. So so I still need to investigate that as well. And that's another thing that I have to make sure that I am on this and understand, you know, what happens there. It's a learning process. You know, it's not straightforward. It never is. So you go step by step and see where it gets you. Then probably most people who use EZproxy will know about Paul Butler's EZproxy blacklist. So he's got a GitHub there where he's got his IP blacklists and his referrer blacklists. We don't block those IPs straight away. I sort of have a look at them and see what's happening there, because I prefer to pick up that user and then block the person than let them go to another IP and I miss it. So we haven't at this stage blocked all those IPs. And for the referrer blacklist, I found, so the bottom suspicious referrers that I've got in there, read through that list to check for referrers from there. But Paul, I've spoken to Paul and he told me that, and I found that as well, our users do tend to use Sci-Hub as a search engine from time to time. So there are users who find Sci-Hub search better than our library search or even Google Scholar. So they go and do a search on Sci-Hub and then jump to EZproxy. So, you know, it's not, you know, you can't actually do much about it. It's not as if they are downloading for Sci-Hub. It's they use the search engine for Sci-Hub. In a certain sense, I feel like blocking those people anyway, and to get them, because it's not a legal site, to get them off, but they're not actually doing anything. They're just doing a search on Sci-Hub. Then I will show you. So as I've said, I am not an expert on Splunk, but this is just one of my queries. For those who haven't seen the query language. So yes, so basically it's not hard to get used to the query language if you've got some IT knowledge. So it's fairly straightforward to pick up. So this is just where I count the IPs per country or the number of countries accessed. and I also list the IPs. So this is just one example of what a query looks like. And the last bit is to anonymize my query. So the other thing, I can show you some reports. So in order for me to be able to investigate each of those users I get in on my dashboard that I'm interested in, I use this one quite extensively. This is my own, so my own user code that I've put in there, just to check what this person has accessed over the last 30 days. So basically just a list of IPs and URLs. So instead of going to your logs and trying to find out what's happening day by day, I just do this general search to see what this person has been accessing. Now, sometimes I filter it by IP. If I can see that the person came from a few different IPs, I like to look at, so what were you doing when you were going to through the US? What were you doing when you were here at Monash? Just to compare, you know, that the person is sort of looking at the same type of things. Yes, so this is basically my main query. We've just last week been able to get our IT team to create a summary index of our faculty information. So once I've got access, or this coming week, I'll probably work on that to get the faculty information in my queries as well, so that I can see straight away the faculty the person belongs to, whether what they've accessed actually correlates with their faculty. At the moment, I have to actively go into our identity management system or our student system and have a look at what the person is studying to make sure that this is, you know, within what you would expect, especially if there's a lot of downloads. Now, we don't limit people to what they're studying, but if there's something funny going on, that's another flag, you know. Because you sometimes get, you know, admin people downloading biochemistry or something like that. And when there's another flag, that raises a flag to it. So yeah, that's the one query that or that one report that I use often. Then I've also got a report that actually looks at a combination of two of my dashboards. I joined two queries here. Now, this is where I hope Josh can help me to better my queries, because I have, this is very time intensive and resource intensive. So I look at the countries and the downloads to see the top number of users who came from different countries as well as a lot of downloads. So I just look at the top. So there's interesting. Should be at least something. I'll let that run. So I've also come across times where accounts have sort of tested URLs. So what they do is once they get someone's account credentials, they test a few databases to see whether they can get access with this account. So when I pick up on that, and what also happens is if you find one account doing it, you sometimes find another account doing exactly the same thing. So it's probably the same person sitting there testing. So this URL is one that's used often as a test, Springer. So I've picked up a few, oops, no, those are not anonymized. But anyway, so I've picked up a few this way by looking at just that Springer link. So I'm going to get out of this one. See if this one is. It's interesting. Must have something gone wrong with my anonymizing of this one. Okay, but anyway, so that's a basic introduction to what we're doing on Splunk, and I hope actually that I can start working with other people to get more ideas for queries, and especially our IT security team once they get onto this now with Okta. So any questions?
I'm interested in the alert section.
Oh, yes.
So are you able to set any parameters like IEEE 10,000 max downloads and then system alerts if that's
Yes. So I'll show you some of the alerts. Now, IEEE, because they use that activity tracker, it's easy to use them as for an alert, because whenever they have, whenever they do inject that, or you see that activity tracker, you know it's definitely true. So what's that doing? So that's one of the alerts that I've set. We would like to sort of get this to automatically run a script that eventually block the users automatically. But at the moment, we're busy migrating our EZproxy access to SSO. So once we've got that done, this will go into an automatic block that will straight away block in EZproxy. So yes, but the alerts, so you basically, all your queries you use for reports, you can set up as alerts. So any query you can do, you can set up as an alert. And the alert can be emailed, it can run a script, it can send a report via email. So there's a few things you can do with the alerts. Okay, there was someone else. Any other questions?
Yeah, how do you load the logs into Splunk? Is it real time? Or?
Yes, so it's an ingestion pipe that's set up. So I haven't got too much knowledge. Ruby, do you?
Yeah, it's the funkiness behind it is called schema on the fly. So we're different to like a data warehouse that needs like a Google search for machine data, typically, which is really what, for example, log files are. We can very quickly index the data, present the search results to you based on the question you're asking. So it's through that mechanism that we access the data source. If you want more technical information, we can send it to you. Otherwise, did you say you're from Flinders Union?
No, I'm from State Library, New South Wales.
Okay, yeah, we could. I thought you were from Flinders. We can have somebody within the customer base reach out to you, or one of our technical people.
But yeah, so it's pretty powerful in that sense. Anything else? Yep.
I was wondering whether, and you may have not explored this or may not exist. I was wondering if Splunk can do kind of learning about what typical patterns are, and then alert you when you get atypical.
Yes.
Have you kind of do manual thresholds?
Yep.
Or...
Yeah, you can get to that point. Ruby, do you want to say something about it?
Yes, you can. The funkiness behind that is called machine learning. Are you from Flinders?
No.
No. Okay, because Lachlan at Flinders is actually investigating this right now. It's a machine learning toolkit, so I'm send you some info about that as well. So the short answer is yes.
Yeah. But
for both questions, we are very keen to understand like the use case, so the business problem you're trying to solve, to then confirm fit for purpose.
Yes.
I know Splunk's got a limitation of 3 months, but for audit purposes, do you need to keep those logs for longer and do you store them off-site or
So
something
what we do with the logs, or what we're busy working on, is to connect it to Tableau, but we also keep the log files anyway on a server. But we're busy looking at the connector between Tableau and Splunk to set that up, because we do our statistics in there. We would like our users to have access to that. So that's the next step we're working on as well. Anything else?
So when you're loading the log records into Splunk, I assume that's where you're getting the user ID from as well, from log files. Is there a mechanism for actually enriching that record with additional?
Yes. So this is where the IT people have built, they call it summary indexes for us of the faculty information. So we can access that faculty information from our identity management system to enrich the statistics.
And is that done on the fly as you do?
Yes. Anything?
Can I ask where the 3 months limit comes from? Is that a Splunk thing?
No, I don't think it's. Is it the Splunk thing? No.
With cloud it is.
Yeah.
But if you want extra, you just have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But that's the standard.
That's the standard. So Monash, they limit us to, limit us to 3 months.
When you say you do investigation, is that mostly using the Splunk tool, or do you use other pieces of information? You were talking already about perhaps correlating the faculty to see whether the interest area matches.
Yeah.
Where
they went.
navigating to.
Yes, so at the moment, we also go back to the event logs, the login and log out event logs, and have a look at that. So, but mainly, I'd say the identity management system to see where this person came from. And I've got a few other queries where I think I've got. That's the one that I just closed now. Yes, so that's the one where I look at the total download. So if something is funny, I'd search on that specific user, even if I look at my one. If I still got it open. Yes, so I'll look at that specific user and I'll include the IP there and do searches on further searches on Splunk. So I tend to use a lot of extra queries on Splunk after I've had a look at my dashboard to investigate, and then the identity management system basically. So our main issue was actually the fact that we didn't have access or easy access to the logs, the files. Our logs are 1 gig a day, around about 1 gig a day. So it was hard to get an insight into yesterday, the day before, without unzipping those files. So this has solved this whole issue of not having an insight in the data.
I'll ask the question primarily for you. If you're only retaining data for 3 months, how are you running machine learning on it? Are you keeping the data in the background for a longer time by just giving institutions 3 months retention period for the cloud?
Probably.
Right, because
So, yeah, but I'm not technical, but I'll confirm that. Yeah.
Because so I'm from the UK, and immediately I'm thinking, how would this work with GDPR and the right to get and all those other things that go with that? So
yeah. And we've actually marshaled around GDPR too. We've got so many assets around that, and are helping customers solve their compliance issues on that. So we feel like I can send you the technical response to the storage, as well as some information on what exactly we're doing to help fulfill GDPR.
that would be great.
Anyone else? Okay, I can hand out this time, so I'll hand out the t-shirts, whoever wants. And do you need to run? You need to catch a flight.
It's only 11 minutes to the airport. I just checked.
Okay, so that's not too bad. So are they all the same slogan?
No, it's just random
Maybe I should leave them here and then when people read.
Let's say more importantly, are they all the same size?
Various sizes.
There is. Yeah, we've got extra larges. This one, another extra large. Oh, that's good. Good to have some extra large, extra large. Are these all extra large? Yes, extra large.
Welcome to life is here.
Poor Ruby's been sitting through these. There's quite a few extra larges. There's a medium, one large. Yeah, medium.
So those that are local to Adelaide, we're here every week. So, if at any point we want to have a discussion, we can happily do that also.
Quite a few extra larges. Anyone for? Anyone for an extra large? And then there's medium and there's large. So
I say all of these are extra large.
yes. Anyone else? I'll put them down here anyway, and then on the way out you can get some if you want. So yeah, extra large, medium, and a large. Close this. Okay. Next.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sabrina Alvaro, and from UNSW, and I will be discussing working with Tableau, Alma, Primo, and Legato. So the agenda for this topic is discussing what is Tableau, Tableau options, UNSW Tableau. So it's enterprise-wide setup of Tableau in UNSW, UNSW's current limitations, why UNSW library uses Tableau, UNSW library future plans with Tableau, demo. So I will be showing you a little bit about the reports that we have created and resources that I used for this presentation. So before I go on my presentation, I just would like to confirm if there's anyone in the audience who doesn't know what Tableau is. Sorry. Okay. Is there any Tableau user in the audience? Okay. Thanks for that info. So if I were going to personally describe what Tableau is, it's a very cool reporting tool that is so powerful that you could connect to any database, almost any database. So primarily the functionality that you do in Tableau is just drag and drop. So you can create your report by just using your mouse. Based on the website of Exlibris, there are many customers that are using Tableau now. So last April 2017, they have announced the open source Exlibris Web Data Connector. So what are the Tableau options? So we have the Tableau server and the Tableau desktop. So basically the server and the desktop works hand in hand. So the Tableau server is more of a repository of the Tableau. And the Tableau desktop is really the tool that you use for creating your reports. So we have three kinds of Tableau server. We have the self-hosted, Tableau hosted, and public version. So if I would compare the public version against the two kinds of server, I would say the main difference is the cost, and the second one is the security. So the public version, of course, since it's public, it's free. And for the other two, I would say that the main advantage of that is the security, because based on your credential, you could filter what kind of reports that you could only see. In public, anyone could see your report. For the Tableau desktop, we have the enterprise and public. So same thing. So the public is a free version. And I guess the main difference for the enterprise and public is the way you store your data. In public, when you create your report, you cannot save your file locally, and you cannot choose where you could upload your reports. For the enterprise, first, you can save your reports locally, and second, you can choose which server you could publish. So you could publish it on a public server, or you could save it on your personal or your enterprise for the self-hosted or Tableau-hosted server. I have a link here that I saw in a blog. It's if you're interested about the differences about self-hosted and Tableau-hosted, you could refer to this blog. Just a note that this is not from the official site of Tableau. This is, as I said, it's just from a blog that I saw. So UNSW Tableau. So this slide talks about the enterprise setup of Tableau. So UNSW is using self-hosted server, and we're using enterprise desktop. So we have 9 dashboards and 1 per faculty. So UNSW Library is considered as faculty in our setup. So we only have 1 dashboard. Just to clarify, the term dashboard here is actually, I think, a project in the official terminology in Tableau. So when you go to Tableau, you could see a lot of tabs, and the first tab that you would see is the project. So basically, that's what the dashboard means here. So ideally, we should have a sandpit and production, but for the time being, we only have sandpit. So basically, the sandpit now is like the production and our playground as well for our reports. So regarding our current limitation, so UNSW is using version 10.5.1. And this is based on our understanding, I mean UNSW Library understanding. The requirement for Ex Libris Web Data Connector needs to be using a server that is version 2018.1. So currently in ALMA, so if we use the Web Data Connector as our data source, we cannot publish it to our own server. But we were just talking last week with Monash. They were using version 10.5.2 and they don't encounter that issue. So I'm not sure if it's just because we are using a lower version. So it's something that we are planning to test in the future once we upgrade our server. So in Primo side, our problem now is actually connecting to Ex Libris Web Data Connector. We cannot connect at all to the open source that they provided. So we have a Salesforce case open for X.
So we can. So
I mean,
the web connector?
Yeah.
We've been able to set that up.
What version are you using?
Oh, I'll check for you.
So as I said, our understanding, it should be a higher version, and we are on the lower version. So that is the current limitation that we are encountering because of the setup in UNSW. So for the time being, we cannot connect to Ex Libris Web Data Connector with our current setup in UNSW. So as a workaround, so we can still play around with our data. So what we do is we manually extract analytics data and we load it in Tableau. And we can publish and we can do our, I mean, normal activity with Tableau. So in spite of the limitations, why are we still using Tableau? So first reason is criteria of the report can be modified on the fly. So on the first screenshot that I'm showing, so you have this report. One good thing about Tableau is it's very interactive. So once you highlight, let's say, the first 3 months, the data at the bottom page would going to change. So that's, I guess, one of the good thing about Tableau is the change of data based on your action. I would say if I would compare it to Alma Analytics or Primo Analytics, it's very user-friendly. So I have this report for the counts of loans by patron group. So as you can see here in the 2 screenshots, the first screenshot is the analytics and the other one is Tableau. So in order for you to create this kind of report in analytics, you have to jump in. Normally, you need to jump into 2 tabs. So you have the criteria and the results. Then after that, you have to click additional action button here before you could choose the type of report that you would want. By default, it will going to load a table. So if you drag and drop a field from your report. But for Tableau, I guess the advantage is you just have it's just using one page. When you drag the one field here in either columns or rows, it will going to automatically generate the report. And then you could choose what type of graph that you would want. So you can click show me button here, and then it will going to change the look of your report. I would say the sharing of the report is very easy in Tableau. So it's kind of like YouTube, wherein there's a link that you could share and everyone could see it. And it's very interactive as compared to, let's say, in analytics. You have to download the file and then email it, and then you cannot play around with the report because it's static. So that's for the easy to share. And lastly, report can be displayed on top of a report via tooltip. So as you can see here, I have this report loaded. And then if you want to drill down additional information about your graph, you can just hover in any of the bar here, and then it will going to drill down. So the granularity in displaying data is very easy using the tooltip feature of Tableau. So UNSW Library future plans with Tableau. So currently, I would say that UNSW Library is still in the learning stage. So we still need to learn, we need to learn more about our data. So currently, we haven't done joining data sources together, because one good thing in Tableau, you could use different data sources. Let's say if you have a different database and then there's a common column, you could join it together and see what would be the effect on your data. So we haven't done it yet, but it's something that we are planning to play around in the future. The second one is to identify correlation in data. So we are planning in the future our different reports that if we could combine together, which leads to the last bullet, which is capture user stories. So hopefully, once we correlate our data, we could provide a more holistic interpretation of our data. Because for the time being, it's just like, let's say, we're analyzing Leganto, but we could, hopefully in the future, we could correlate it with the data in ALMA, in Primo, or whatever data we currently have at UNSW. Okay, so just an FYI, for the demo, I will not going to show to you the information about how to connect in Web Data Connector because Ex Libris have already provided an instruction and it's very easy to follow. But at the latter slide, I will show you the link on the information on how to connect to Web Data Connector. What I will present in the demo is the reports that we are currently using at UNSW. Okay. Okay. So currently, this one I'm using a public server here because our Tableau server is using a VPN if you're outside UNSW, and I don't have the software here to connect to VPN. So for the time being, I just temporarily published our report in the public server. So our library management always gets the top 25 search strings weekly. So we just try to play around with it and try to put it in Tableau. So how will it look like? Then we have tried to create a report to compile all the search strings that is being searched in Primo. And this is what we got. So I have a filter here all for UNSW Sydney and for UNSW Canberra. As you can see here, A is the top one. So this is not from the official explanation of Ex Libris, but as per our understanding, it might be the Find e-journals because currently the analytics cannot identify whether it's a click or an actual search. And our default page goes to the A in Find e-journals. So that's our guess why we are getting A. However, you can actually, give me a sec. Exclude the data so you could have a better representation of your search result. So that's it. I forgot to show. But I'm going to filter the result based on Sydney and Canberra, just an FYI. So for Canberra, this is how it looks like. And give me a sec. And this is for Sydney. So with this kind of bubble report, you could easily see the kinds of searches and the variation of search patterns that our student is doing. So the last tab shows you a different kind of report. It is the one that I showed you in my slide. So this one, when you hover if you hover in one bar, so you could see the granularity of the search result that was done for this specific month. Okay. This next slide that slide report that I will show to you is percentage of mobile activities versus mobile activities per active student. So just give you an overview why we have this report. Our library management actually requested this one because we have Campus M app. So it's a mobile application by XLibris, and we are on a stage where we are planning to create a UX group. So the target for the UX group are the people who are actually using their Leganto on their mobile devices. So the target for this UX group are the people, give me a sec, who are on this section. So basically, our academic services unit is planning, I'm not sure if they already approached or they are planning to approach the faculty and the students that are enrolled for this class if they are interested to be part of our UX group for our Campus M evaluation for the user experience. Okay, the last report that I will show to you is the loan time statistics. We have this report because this is something that my teammates saw in Eluna, and he thought of replicating it on our Tableau. So basically, the purpose of this is for better allocation of your staff in your staff terminal. So you could see here when is the busiest time of the day, so that you could have a more informed decision when to allocate more people in your staff terminal. So this one has two methods, the self-check machines and staff terminal. So you might want to just filter it to staff terminals only because they are the kind of method that you would want to evaluate only. And let's say filter it by 2018. So based on this result, it shows that it seems that every 8 to 9 a.m. is the busiest time in our staff terminals. And if you try,
this time of day.
yes. So if you try to check our self-check machines, it's a different story. So as you can see here, the busiest time is sometime in the afternoon, could be like, give me a sec, 1 to 2 p.m. So you could see the pattern how students are loaning items from UNSW. So as I said, this is something that your client services team might want to use to better analyze when they should allocate more people in their staff terminal. Okay, so for the resources, as I've mentioned earlier, there's a very good documentation by XLibris on how to connect to Web Data Connector. I have included it here in the slide, so just check the information here, and it's very easy to use. I would like to acknowledge Greg Davis from Iowa State University for his presentation at Eluna 2018. So some of the information that I put in this slide came from his presentation at Eluna. I also highly recommend that people highly recommend to subscribe in Alma L and Primo L and Analytics, because many discussion about the issues and how people resolve the issues are in that subscription. So just try to subscribe in that list. So here's my contact information if you have further questions about Tableau, I would be glad to assist you by contacting me in the email. But for the time being, do you have any questions? Okay.
Sabrina, I'm just interested to know about how the rollout for Tableau is actually going at UNSW. So do you know what proportion of people are using Analytics and what proportion are using Tableau?
Actually, as far as I know, there are 2 teams only as of the moment in the UNSW Library that is highly using Tableau. But in terms of the enterprise-wide, we have actually a very good support from UNSW community. One good thing is that the team that is supporting Tableau server, they actually handles a community day. I can't remember the schedule, like how many times in a year they handle it, but I already attended one before and I'm going to attend one soon. So it's a good kind of engagement because people from different faculties could meet and share their experiences with Tableau. So there's a great support in UNSW community. Is there any other questions?
I can confirm that the web data connector does not work for 10.1.16 either.
Okay, thank you for that. Thank you. So that's the end of my presentation.
Okay, so I don't have a title up here, sorry.
So do you guys want to sit down and talk, or do you know?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Someone remember the title of this? Oh, here we go. So this was inspired by me writing an email to the Code for Lib mailing list saying, does anyone have a better way than we do of keeping track of system interdependencies? So at Lincoln, but for us particularly, it's the data that we send between systems. So it's on that level of Elements sends data to DSpace, DSpace sends data to Primo. And we've got big integrations, and then we've got little things that we've scraped together in a few hours. And just wanting to make sure that we know if something falls down, what else is going to be broken, or if I delete this file, how many things are going to fall over as a result. And I got I got one response privately, but essentially no responses on the mailing list. So Sue suggested that we do a talk and talk about how we each do track these things and see if anyone else is doing better things. So this did not save well. Basically, what I do is in Visio. I started it when I started my job, and I was trying to get my head around all the different systems we manage, and I started it on pencil and paper, and then it got useful enough and complicated enough that I transferred it to Visio, and now I sort of just keep it updated every few months. I realize, oh wait, we've changed that system. I'm going to have to move some lines around. The problem with Visio is that every time you try to move a box around, it rearranges the entire thing. So it's starting to get a little tricky to maintain. So yeah, I mean, my latest version, I've put it into these different areas. So you've got the library stuff, which is mostly the different sources that sends bibliographic records to Alma and Primo, which was too complicated to include here. So that's an appendix. On the right, we've got all of our web systems. So there's a couple of servers that we've got access to dump stuff on. We've got WordPress, got some APIs and various applications for our room booking system and so forth. Our teach stuff, Equala, course evaluation systems which integrate with Moodle, a teaching website, Learn, primarily Moodle, and course, yeah, Career Hub, My Day for the student profile. Research has all of our repositories and elements and all of the ways those things talk to each other, and ID and authentication, which is its own tangle of things, because pretty much every system we need needs to be authenticated to in some way or other. So I've color coded this. I've got shapes, I've got areas, and doing my best to keep track of it, but it's not really suitable. It's reaching the point where it's not going to be very maintainable. Plus, it would be really useful to get more detail in here, to be able to talk about what versions of things we're on, when are we going to have to upgrade, when we do upgrade, what documentation are we going to have to refer to? If something breaks, what are the things that we should start by troubleshooting? So we've got some systems where they break often enough that I've got a really good troubleshooting, do this, now do this, now do this, there's your problem. But other systems, they mostly work, so there's no documentation. So if they do break, we're in real trouble. That's where we are.
Yeah, sure.
Pass on over.
Yeah.
Oh, this. There you go.
Cool, thanks. So we're pretty lucky at the State Library of New South Wales in that we've got a really good infrastructure team who supply me with very nice network diagrams. So that's kind of like the first. This is a kind of a simplified, limited scope version of one of those network diagrams. It only covers really the 4 systems which make up our collection management, or 5 systems which cover our collection management system. Yeah, so it's basically just a network diagram with, for the internal stuff, with load balancers and app servers and database servers and storage and the connections between all of them. But what I've also started doing is when we have able to help us troubleshoot specific problems, like if a service goes down, I've started doing these dependency graphs. So I'm trying to build up, so we have one for every single service. And so then the idea is basically that this is where we get more into putting into the protocols in between of the APIs and integrations. And I probably want to start putting more detail into these dependency graphs. But basically, this is our digital delivery service dependency graph. So if we get a service desk call that digital delivery is not working or is not performing well, or there's a problem with it, basically starts and follow the dependency graph through to try and identify where the problem is. So this helps narrow it down to start with, and yeah. So basically, we're just I don't have a graph for every service, but that's kind of what we use. Yeah, Nish, do you want to?
What tool are you using to draw it?
What tool do I use? I use it's an online free. I think it's called Glyphy or something like that. Yeah, Glyphy.io or something. Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a bit of a discussion before, and as one of the things we don't do very well is this. This is nope, that's not it. Oh, cool. So we actually went through a process. Actually, it wasn't us. It was Central IT went through a process about 2015, and started mapping out every system and every connection in the university.
I think it's on slideshow or something.
Is it? Oh, okay. That's sorry. Yeah. So we started mapping out every system for every faculty, every department on campus. This is just the library's view. So every, like, finance got one, faculty of arts got one, faculty of science got one, and so on. So everybody got their own. This was ours. So they came in and they did pretty much a very comprehensive audit in 2015, 2016. And this was the result of the library one. And it kind of gave an overview for Central IT of what they're actually managing. And from the library perspective, it gave us a glimpse at what's actually involved. And it's so comprehensive. And I am reasonably confident that we've missed stuff. So, and that's a large scale. And by 2017, this was outdated. So the problem we have is, yeah, nobody goes in and maintains things like this. It's a very, it's a big task. It's complicated. There's lots of, you've got technological difficulties, you've got cultural issues, you've got process issues. Things change, but then don't get updated in the appropriate places. We don't really have appropriate places to update them in the first place. At this scale, what we have, like when we do projects and launch systems and services, things like that, we usually have a diagram not too dissimilar to this, probably sometimes a little bit more detail. You've got ports, protocols, IP addresses, that sort of thing. So this is like an example of our library finance interface between Alma and our finance system and how things work. And so this is the kind of stuff we do. So like if we want to find out what the dependencies of a system are, we've got all the stuff on a wiki page for every system we have. So it's really difficult to do any kind of semantic knowledge extraction from a system when you're using a wiki like that. So if I want to find out, hey, if this server X goes down, what downstream things are going to be affected? From a wiki page, you'd have to go through every single system you have to see where that specific system actually exists in your diagrams. And again, nobody does that, right? So as I said, we don't do this very well. And as I said, there's some reasons for it, excuses for it, sorry, I should say. And one of them is the library and Central IT. There's a lot of separate domain stuff. So the library IT is responsible for some stuff, and the library is responsible for some stuff, and Central IT is responsible for some stuff. And there's bits of our infrastructure that we don't have any access to or control over, and there's bits that we have a limited amount of control over. So when we're trying to put a diagram like this together, there's like chunks of this we just don't know, because like something will go to point B and then we don't know what happens to it past that point. So when we doing this kind of thing, it's trickier because you only have partial visibility into what your system's actually doing, what your service is actually doing. So yeah, so we don't really have any really good answers to it. But yeah, so very interested to see what people think, what people are doing. Has anybody addressed this issue? I know you've got things like CMDBs, but again, they also rely on people manually entering data, which is again an issue. People don't like to manually enter data. Things change at deadlines or pressure points where you go and make the change because the service has to be up and running immediately, but you don't necessarily then go and reflect that in the documentation in 4 different places where it's supposed to be. So yeah, that's just the nature of things, I guess. So how do you address that? That's a very interesting question.
One thing I want to get more towards is more dynamic documentation. This is all very static and like, yeah, it gets stale, right? So quickly. So
you want something so that when you do go and make a change in the system, you can just note it in one place and access it however you want later. I mean, our ITs have been making murmurings about a service catalogue, and I've got a very fuzzy idea, you know, just those two words, I went, oh, that sounds like what I want. So I don't know how it would actually work. I'm hoping that when they get it for themselves, they'll let me piggyback and use it for my purposes. You know, the way they described it sounded like it could be relevant, but.
Yeah, so one thing we've actually been looking at, I mean, I'm not sure how many people have heard of Ansible, for example, which is basically kind of like called orchestration management of systems, where your actual infrastructure is kind of encoded, like its infrastructure is code effectively. And you basically have your infrastructure as code in this configuration system where you just run a playbook and it goes and builds or repairs or fixes or changes configuration files. And you maintain your configuration in a config. And that's moving towards what I'm talking about, where your configuration is managed centrally and spit out automatically. But that's at a very low level at the moment. Like it manages servers. We can install servers, services, firewalls, all that sort of stuff, create users, or do all that kind of thing. But it probably can, but we haven't really managed to evolve that to a level where you would be able to deploy application services coherently yet. That takes a bit more maturity, I think, in how we use the tool, and we're not quite there yet. Yes, is anybody else using tools like that? Yep.
Ansible and Terraform.
Ansible, Terraform, excellent.
Yeah, but still, it doesn't solve this issue for us. We are really, really bad at this process.
Yeah.
The other issue that we have is where you are unaware of dependencies at all. If these are known dependencies, then if you publish open data or open APIs and others start using it, and then something changes, how do you know how you're going to inform all of them?
Yes. Yeah.
As I say, so we do these diagrams in our solution architecture and solution design document, but they never ever get updated because those documents kind of get signed off on, and therefore can become unupdatable.
Exactly. That's what this is. It's fun about this.
So for us, we maintain a SharePoint list of dependencies. It's visually unattractive, but it's very useful for the situation where system X has gone down. Give me all the systems Y that are using it. The second thing we do is, and we're kind of early days on this, but now we're mandated that every connections have to go through an enterprise bus. And the enterprise bus is apparently meant to be able to give us this information naturally about who's talking to what.
So also from a system level for doing that kind of stuff, we used to have, absolutely have a cloud-based infrastructure management or monitoring tool called like New Relic. There's like Datadog, various other bits and pieces like that. New Relic specifically used to have the capability of, you install agents on all your servers, right? So everything basically has an agent on there, and it can actually kind of go through an inventory of what's sitting on that server and kind of report it up to a central data store sitting in the cloud. And based on all the information that's coming from everywhere, it can actually build service maps for you. So this server, this service, this application is talking to this server, service application, and so on, and build a network of connectivity for you to have a look at. And we actually had that, and was often surprised. Hey, what? Why is this talking to that? Like, what's going on there? So you can, so that's an automated way of doing it. For example, doing some of it, but it doesn't address everything. And there's no documentation about it. It's just like literally raw network traffic that it's having a look at to seeing what's calling what and what's using what. So it doesn't really tell you. You can see there's a call being made. You can even maybe identify what the call is, but like not what the content is, what the context is, what part of what system, and so on. So it starts to become.
You were saying that's obviously stuff on your own servers. It doesn't help if you're using stuff in the cloud.
Correct. Not mostly. Always, but mostly. But you can have that does hook into cloud services as well.
Right.
Mainstream ones.
You just can't install the agents on the cloud services, obviously. So.
But a lot of the cloud services often have agents that you can tie into. So they have integrations for various services in Europe and things like that. So.
I think Exceed's infrastructure runs New Relic as well.
Yeah.
I think.
So what do other people do?
It's a completely different topic, but might be useful because we really don't do any of this. But we had Death by PDFs for organizational charts, which is kind of similar, different versions again and again and again. So we just went with lucid chart and we said nobody's going to generate any PDFs, everyone will modify it there. And that's got version control as well as you just modify it in the cloud and everyone gets to see the most recent version. But that was for our organizational charts, nothing to do with, we don't do any of this, which is scary.
Well, USA we're using, and I think another level, there's a lot more interest now in enterprise architecture, looking at application portfolio management. So, business value chains, not so much at the system level, but how they actually relate to specific functions and deliverables within.
So you're going even a higher level up, basically. Yeah.
There's a project underway for that as well. But same challenges. How do you stop the data from being stale? And
and especially technical people, I mean, updating documentation is like the least of what I like to do. So that's the other problem. That's a cultural thing / process thing. So.
What about ITSM, your help desk systems, your CMDBs? What's everyone using there? Is there some sort of functionality that can
see, we use ServiceNow at Macquarie, and it actually does have some of these. It does have these. I should say it has modules which do this kind of stuff to some extent, but again, there's still that manual component where you have to actually go in and do stuff. We've just started using at the end of last year this company called Device 42. So anybody's heard of that? Basically, it's this is an initiative from our central IT, so it's nothing to do with the library or anything like that. Basically, they scan every device on your network. So everything that is connected to your network or connects to your network gets scanned, polled, using, I'm not sure exactly what technology they use, but they grab about as much information as they can about that device, and it goes into the centralized data store. So they can tell like which switch, which building, and so on. So, so down to like the desktop, you're connecting to a network port on a switch, which connects to a bigger switch, which connects to whatever. So they've got a full, they're trying to do a full map of every device across campus, but that's a very low level, but high detail at the hardware level. And it can actually do, on like say a desktop, scan a desktop to see what software is running on that desktop as well, for example. So yeah, I forgot what the point was I was trying to make. Sorry, but anyway, that's one of the things they do, is to try to gather that information. So again, so this is like,
but in gathering that information, how does it feed back to you in the library?
See, it doesn't to us at the moment, right? So, but again, you can gather that information. You could possibly then dump that into like something like ServiceNow. I'm not sure whether that works or not. But again, these are all disparate products, all doing bits and pieces. It's difficult to get that overall view of what's happening in an organization. If you had one piece of software that could do everything and you could just get like one nice pretty view and then drill down from there, that would be ideal.
Awesome. Yeah, dynamic, you can click on the server and then have more information and then the information flow.
So you have like all the neural components which connect with the device, where you could basically marry everything up together. And
yeah, something where you could zoom in out to high level, but then go down to really.
It's the kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, essentially, I've got this idea of something that is essentially a database, maybe with triples or something, and you put in everything, whether it's a high priority system like Elements or the library catalog, or one of these one pager things that, so you can zoom out and see the big picture, or you can zoom in on one little thing and see.
And that would be ideal.
It'd be great. So yeah. It sounds like it doesn't exist. I was really hoping it would exist.
It probably does exist. It will be wickedly expensive.
Yeah.
I think all these things are wickedly expensive on their own. And that's the other problem. Each little piece of information you want to capture is going to cost you a fortune. Like getting device 42 is probably costing a fortune. I know ServiceNow probably costs a fortune. URLIC also costs a fortune. So you look at all these things together, and it's like.
The other problem is, of course, if every extra system you get to manage your systems is another system that you have to manage.
Yep. And so that's where we're at.
Or you just turn it off and wait till you hear.
We have been known to do that.
Deborah, the chart that you have done, does
Yeah.
that help with staff induction? So
Yeah, well, I use that all the time for so many things. I've got it on my wall. I use that, I glare at it whenever I'm thinking about our strategy. I take it when I'm trying to talk to campus IT and explaining to them why they need to let us know when they're going to be messing with some system, because look, it's going to impact this, 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 and this. Yeah, staff induction, for library teaching and learning as a whole, I tend to show people so they can see the overview of everything we deal with. My team, it's me and one other person, but yeah, certainly I've given my colleague a copy, and yeah, it is useful for that, both getting an overview and a bit getting a basic idea for troubleshooting, at least giving you a starting point. So yeah, it has been really, I started it just to get my head around what systems we had, because at the time when I had been a subject librarian, and now I was suddenly diving into library IT for the first time in my life, and I just had to remember what each system actually did. But it has grown to be really useful for pretty much the entire job.
we have something like that in terms of the applications we support at the centre, and then the connections out.
Yeah.
Which we use in staff induction if there's a new person coming into the team.
Yeah.
And if we go to a meeting with IT, take it off the wall and
take
it with us.
And especially when ITS bring consultants in to look at something, and I'm going, okay, wait, but you also need to know this. Yeah. So yeah, most of this stuff is our own things, but it's a mixture. There's stuff that we have on our own server, or we have a direct relationship with the vendor. There's stuff in the cloud, and then there's stuff that ITS manage and we aren't able to touch. So there's a whole range of all of those things covered on there.
And that's the problem, because when they change something out there,
you're
not always in the conversation to update your own stuff.
But we're trying to build that relationship with ITS, so that I've given them a copy of this, and every now and then when I update it, I give them an updated one, so that at least theoretically they know that we have an interest in these things, and so therefore please tell us if you are going to change it.
And we do, one of the things that we do with the service desk, if we're launching something new and it's transitioning out of sort of implementation into support, is that they do engage us in, the service desk engages us in conversations about the troubleshooting flow, in terms of, okay, we get to this point, is that an IT problem or is it a library problem? So we've done a bit of work there, but the problem is once we've handed that document over to the service desk, we tend to forget about it. So that's something we're having to put back on our radar to make sure if we're changing something, we engage again.
It would be really handy to have, even if there was a nice web site, so you could put it on the web and give them the link and update it so they've got the latest.
So maybe what Masood was saying about what you're doing with the org charts, that could adapt to that.
You can do technology things, you can't do people things.
No. Okay. Thank you very much. And there's tea and coffee downstairs. Oh, great.
Thank you.
Oh. Can I load it up through my cloud service, or?
Okay. After the break.
Yeah, sure.
So use him. Nish.
If you do ANZREG stuff, I'll just show you.
Nish, sorry, can I just go